Democrats are calling for lawmakers to return to Washington immediately for a vote on whether to stop further military action in Iran. This comes as Republican leadership in both the House and the Senate issued statements in support of President Trump's strikes. Meanwhile, California Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs, who serves on the Armed Services and Foreign Affairs committees, is spelling out what's at stake if military action continues unchecked. She writes, quote, Donald Trump's strikes on Iran will go down as one of the biggest foreign policy blunders in American history.
The opposition is preparing a resolution to limit President Trump's powers regarding Iran. When Congress starts moving to restrain a president in the middle of military momentum, it's no longer just another partisan fight. It's a real test for American democracy. What's at stake here isn't only Iran, nor is it only Trump. It's the question that always returns in the most dangerous moments of U.S. foreign policy. Who decides when America goes to war? And what interests are really guiding that decision? Stick with me until the end, because this discussion is much bigger than it appears.
And Congresswoman Jacobs is with us now on set. So, Congresswoman, MS Now has learned that Pentagon officials will brief key staff tomorrow, including both of your committees. What questions do you have for the officials overseeing this operation?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of questions. I have questions about what the strategy is. I have questions about what the end game is. I have questions about, do they plan on committing American troops on the ground? What do they hope is going to happen? From what I can tell, they have no answers yet on what a strategy is, on, you know, whether or not they have a real end game on what will happen next. And that's really concerning.
Congresswoman, I want to ask you about something that your colleagues on the Foreign Affairs Committee, your Republican colleagues on the Foreign Affairs Committee, posted on Twitter. They posted this image tonight of Trump. I think we can pull it up. But it says, President Trump is ending the forever war that Iran has waged against America for the last 47 years.
That is a hell of a pretzel to twist yourself in.
What is your response to that message?
Yeah, I mean, it is completely ridiculous, right? First of all, it makes no sense. Second of all, like, actually, this 47-year war that they're talking about, let's talk about how it started. It started in large part because the United States went into Iran and did a regime change operation. That is a big reason that led us to this very brutal Islamic regime that's in place now. And so, if anything, it's highlighting the fact that we don't know what actually is going to happen after we do these kinds of regime change operations. You're likely to get a more hardline regime, a security vacuum, potentially civil war. And the idea that they're saying that this is ending a forever war, when I think the entirety of the American public can see that it is in fact starting another one, despite President Trump promising not to do that, is kind of preposterous.
I wanted to ask you a question about the politics and the split within MAGA and the MAGA world around these strikes. Because Donald Trump, one of the things that he did was he campaigned on ending wars and promising not to start any new wars. I mean, I would probably argue is the most central tenet that distinguished him from anyone else. His acolytes at the time were saying Kamala Harris will get you into war, Liz Cheney will get you into war when she was campaigning with Kamala Harris. He has betrayed that. And I'm wondering why Republicans are going along with that betrayal, knowing that he promised the American people no more new wars. And here we are.
Well, listen, I can tell you that I've been hearing from folks in my district, and many of them might have given him a chance because they thought he was going to end wars. You know, I represent San Diego, the biggest military community in the country, and so these questions of war and peace are very central to my constituents. They're the ones who pay the price, and a lot of them are saying they regret that vote, that, you know, they feel betrayed. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to say, like, I understand you took him at his word, but let's acknowledge what's happening now, and we welcome you into this coalition to push back against this war.
But this is where a war powers vote becomes a potential problem for Republicans, who they actually have voters who thought that they meant it when they said they were not going to support more wars of choice. And so if this vote happens, do you potentially foresee that some Republicans, aside from Thomas Massie, who, of course, has been at the forefront of pushing for congressional authorization and oversight, would join Democrats on this bill?
Look, we are having conversations with a number of our Republican colleagues, and I do think there are many who are considering it. And, you know, again, for the very reason you said, also, like, our service members deserve us to have a real debate, not to mention that the vast majority of the American public is against this war. And so I hope that people are calling their representatives, making their voices heard, because I do think that's really going to matter when this vote comes to the floor, likely on Thursday.
Do you think that these strikes should add to Democrats' resolve to investigate Donald Trump's ties, financial ties, I should say, in the Middle East? I mean, part of the reason I ask is that Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, they all have financial ties with the Trumps and or Jared Kushner. From the Qatar plane gift to Trump to the UAE announcing a $2 billion investment in the crypto venture founded by the Trump family and advisor Steve Witkoff. You know, it feels like this is an opportunity to follow the money.
There is a lot of very rigorous oversight that we need to do in addition to the war powers vote. And even the fact that we are questioning, did Donald Trump make this decision in the interest of U.S. national security, or did he make this decision in the interest of his own family's business interests, should be enough that we should all be very, very concerned about these business dealings that he's doing, because we should know without a doubt that our commander-in-chief, our president, even if we disagree with the decision, is making decisions solely about whether or not this is in the U.S.'s national interest. And frankly, I've yet to hear him articulate why this was so important to U.S. national security.
There comes a moment when a military decision stops being merely strategic and becomes structural. That's exactly where we are right now. The killing of a head of state, especially in a country like Iran, is not an isolated tactical operation. It's an act that profoundly and unpredictably alters the geopolitical balance. What catches my attention isn't just the legality of the decision, but the precedent. If a president can order the elimination of a high-ranking foreign leader without explicit congressional authorization, we are facing a practical and dangerous expansion of executive power. Because the Constitution wasn't designed to be convenient, it was designed to impose checks. And checks are uncomfortable by definition. The White House's argument seems to rest on the idea of authority as commander-in-chief and on prior briefings given to selected leaders. But briefing is not authorization. Information does not replace a vote. Consulting is not the same as obtaining formal consent. And that distinction matters, especially when the outcome could be a regional war. Now let's talk about real consequences. Eliminating a leader does not end conflicts in the Middle East. More often, it radicalizes them. Iran is not just a centralized government. It operates through networks, allied militias, regional groups, and indirect influence. Retaliation may not come in the form of a traditional invasion, but through asymmetric attacks, energy sabotage, cyber attacks, or actions against America's strategic allies. The escalation can be diffuse, prolonged, and very difficult to contain. Politically, Trump is playing a high-stakes game. Part of his base was built on exhaustion with foreign interventions. The promise was to end cycles of conflict, not open new ones. If public perception solidifies that there has been a break between rhetoric and practice, the impact may not come only from the Democratic opposition. It could emerge from within the Republican coalition itself. And internal divisions are usually far more dangerous than external attacks. Talk of impeachment doesn't arise out of nowhere. It emerges when there is a perception of abuse of power. But impeachment is not only a legal instrument, it is a political process. And to move forward, it must cross partisan barriers. The question now is, are uncomfortable Republicans willing to turn unease into concrete action, or will electoral calculations speak louder? At the center of all this is something bigger, the definition of presidential limits in the 21st century. Since 2001, American presidents have increasingly used broad, generic military authorizations to justify wide-ranging operations. Every uncontested step becomes the foundation for the next, and institutional silence is often the most powerful authorization of all. America faces a choice. Either it reaffirms that decisions about war require broad debate, transparency, and a formal vote, or it consolidates the practice of unilateral actions with global consequences. This isn't just about Trump, it's about the precedent that will remain for the next president, whoever that may be. If you believe Congress needs to reclaim its constitutional role, leave a comment below. I want to hear your opinion. And if this analysis helps you see beyond the headline, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Because what's at stake right now is the very balance of American democracy.